The following presentation was recorded live for the International Association of Square Dance Callers 19th Annual Convention. We take you live to Virginia Beach, Virginia, where our session is just getting underway.
The moderator of this panel is going to be a little bit late, so he'll be coming in another 15, 20 minutes. EZ kind of double booked him, so John won't be here right off the bat to moderate. My name is Randy Dougherty, and this is Steve Kopman. I know some of you have heard those names before. There are some other callers out there using those last names. I hope you'll judge us on our own merits. I don't predict to be a yodeler, and Steve doesn't profess to be God, so... But be careful what you say, because he is listening. Our panel, or our discussion today, is going to be teaching the advance. We hope to point out some similarities, some differences. Maybe sometime during our discussion we'll try to get a square up. For our own information, how many of the callers out there are already actively calling advance? Okay. Do we have anybody out there that is not calling advance, or maybe just learning to dance advance? Okay. Well, either. All right. Very good. If we use some terminology that you're not aware of, please feel free to question us or jump in at any moment. A little bit of background. I call in an area that is a retirement area during 6 months of the season down in Mesa, Arizona, in Tucson. And my opinions on some of the things that I do are going to be probably different than Steve or John when he joins us a little bit later. Both Steve and I are full-time callers. We both call not just advance, but the whole programs. We do it for a living. And I guess with that, I think most of you know the rest of our credentials. We're just going to turn it over to Steve and let him get into it.
It's kind of interesting for me because I grew up eating dinner at the time that Recycle was written and Chain Reaction was written. So a lot of these things were second nature to me. I didn't think anything of sitting down at the table with Mom and Dad and my sister and moving forks and coming up... salt and pepper shakers, and I think some of the meals that were made were geared around square dancing. We had to have pretty much 8 string beans on a plate so that we can get some of these figures done. This is how I grew up, so it's kind of unusual, but still very exciting to have that kind of a background. I want to start with a little story that I think is important for everybody to learn, and this is a true story. Where I call in Tennessee, there was a local caller who wanted to call advanced. He never danced advanced, and he had never called advanced. And he used to come to my challenge group just to stop in and say hello and very cordial kind of thing. He'd spend about 10 or 15 minutes saying hello, wanting to know what's been doing, what's been happening. Well, after a couple of months of this friendship that we had kind of developed, he had said to me, Steve, I've got a group that wants me to call advance for them, and I've never called advanced. Do you have any material that you could give me or so I can get started? Well, he had seen me use cards when I call the High Levels Challenge, and I said, well, if you want, I've got advanced cards that you want to take a look at. You're welcome to get a feel for it, to see what it's all about. So I gave him a couple of hundred cards. And I think if ever you write material, you use little mannerisms, little different insignias and stuff to describe. You don't write out the whole call. So I explained to him all my little idiosyncrasies. And he brought me the cards back 2 weeks later, and he had rewritten the cards where he could understand them. He never looked up the calls, never took the time to workshop them or learn to dance them. So now he looked at a couple of hundred cards that he had rewritten, and he proceeds to go out and call the dance. This dance, as you might imagine, was a disaster for him And a lot of the dancers that danced to me went to him and couldn't dance my material. He came back and said, "Oh boy, Steve, these cards were, bad. They were this and they were that." And I said, "Now wait a minute. How did you know when it came time to help them?" "Well, I just watched them." "Well, how did you know when to call the next call?" "Well, whenever they stopped, I gave them the next command." Now imagine for a second you were to call recycle, and after 5 or 6 seconds you say enroll. It's impossible. And the point of the whole story that I wanted to start with you was to say that you cannot go into this lightly. When a dancer is going to learn the next level, whether it's plus or advanced or higher, they have to take a minimum of 1 year of lessons before you would let them move into the next level. And I think it was irresponsible or unfair professionally to jump into this without being prepared. I think you have to make a commitment. Before you can dance or before you can call advanced, you really better know how to dance advanced. You don't have to be the best dancer on the floor. Most callers are not the best dancers on the floors when we're out there calling. You agree with that?
I would agree.
Pam is good. I don't know about you. So the first point that I think that you have to understand is this takes work. This takes a commitment. When teachers go to college to become teachers, they spend 4 years educating themselves to learn how to teach other people. We are teachers. Our responsibility in teaching other people first is to ourselves. We have got to know the calls. If you know how to do the calls, then you will be able to convey that to the dancers. And that is really important if you're going to be successful. And the dancers are the ones that get burned by this, because they'll go out to somebody else and then they'll get clobbered at a dance because they haven't been taught properly. Randy and I have very different ideas in how we teach because of our program, and he touched on this. Randy, being in Arizona, gets to see the dancers about 4 months of a year, something like that? 4 months. I get to see the dancers 12 months in Tennessee. So I can take the time when I'm teaching my dancers, because I have a different environment that I'm working in. And I think we're going to expand on that a little bit too as we get going, right?
Hope so.
Okay. Turn it back over to you.
Okay. I think what I'd like to do is start out with trying to talk about some similarities and differences between teaching beginners, teaching the plus, maybe even the differences between A1 and A2. Because where I come from, there's even a different philosophy between the A1 and the A2. A lot of areas don't have a sharp division between A1 and A2. In Mesa and Tucson, we do. People take a time and dance the A1 for at least a year or two, and then proceed on into the A2. So I'm just going to throw out a few things that I wrote down as far as similarities, okay? Between not just the plus and the mainstream, but number one factor that is similar in all the programs is fun. They got to have fun. That was one of the similarities, I thought. No matter if you're teaching somebody how to do an Allman left or how to teach them to do square chain through, you got to make sure you're doing a thorough teach. It doesn't matter. That's a similarity. I felt also that needing repetition to learn is a similarity. I kind of wasn't sure if I should put that on the similar side or on the differences, because also at the advanced level, I feel once you've shown them how to do the call a couple of times at the advanced level, they seem to be able to grasp onto that faster, and so you don't have to have the repetition that you do. But I put repetition down as one of the similarities. I think the difference also is that the A2 dancer has learned to listen to the caller, a little more intent than the beginner or the mainstream dancer. Also, the A2 dancer, one of the differences is I think they learn through showing various positions. They learn to grasp the call better than if you tried to show positions of doing, for instance, square through. Sometimes I think the new dancer, we're always trying to say, teach everything by definition. And I do try to teach by definition. But I don't always try to show every possible position when I'm working with new dancers. And at A2, you can get into showing them more positions. I feel they're ready at that particular point in their dancing career to be shown more than just one way of doing it. When we start out teaching chain reaction to our A2 dancers, we pretty well use the standard pass the ocean for the heads and then take off on a teach. We let them dance that way, at least in the Arizona area, for maybe a year or two at the A1 program. By the time they reach A2, we start working with more positions right off the bat then, and having that wave do a swing through, putting all the 4 boys in the wave. At that particular point, we start working more positioning with the chain reaction call. We don't jump right in and start doing left-handed chain reactions. To go back to the very first thing I mentioned, fun's got to be part of it. One thing that I do, I'm going to take about 2 or 3 calls and tell you how I teach them. And one of the calls that I always have trouble with is the zigzag call. Everybody has trouble with zigzag. I get kind of comments from the dancers, they like to have that taken off the list. And when I'm teaching zigzag, I tell them that it's probably one of the harder calls because it's a leader-follower concept, and a lot of dancers haven't been taught the leader-follower concept. They think of the zigzag call and they think right-left. And I do a little exercise in the beginning of the tip before I actually get into the teach, which I'm trying to incorporate fun into it. And I tell them, we're not going to be concerned with leader or follower for the time being. I'm just going to try to teach you that zig means right and zag means left. And I usually give them a bunch of double talk saying, you all know how to spell right, R-I-G-H-T. You know how to spell zig, Z-I-G. And I tell them there's an I and G in right, an I and G in zig. Zig must be right. There is no A, there is no G in right, so zag must be left. Meanwhile, their head is going in and out. But anyway, what I do is I just incorporate, every time I'm going to use the call right, I incorporate the word zig. Every time I'm going to use the word zag, every time I use the word left, I'm going to incorporate the word zag. And then I proceed to call the tip. And it will usually go something like this. Bow to your partner, bow to your corner, circle to the zag, Alaman zag with your zag hand, partner zig, and a zigzag grand. And you usually get that kind of response. And then they kind of figured out, well, this guy means it. And you go on, and you'll have the head slide through and do a zag square through 3, and then do a zig and zag through and veer to the zag. And then tag your line and face zig. And they have to actually learn that zig is right and zag is left by doing that. It still has nothing to do with actual concept of zigzag, which is a leader-follower concept. Then after I've had a little bit of fun and I got them relaxed, then I tell them what a leader is and what a follower is, or a trailer. And I usually go back and I have to reteach zoom to them. Because zoom is one of those calls that there is a leader and a follower. And usually if you have the heads slide through and double pass through and call zoom, even though the advanced dancer should be able to handle that, the newer advanced dancer is sometimes shaken by that. Usually they try to do a zing instead of a zoom. And at the same time, I'm doing a repeat teach on zoom. I usually repeat the teach on peel and trail, because that is a leader-follower concept. And then once they actually learn that what a leader is and a follower is, then you go back through and you start calling some zigzag concept to them. But it's a hard concept because they have to think work split. And that's one thing that I think a lot of callers don't tell people. It's just like having the heads pair off and star through with your corner and then say, swing through. They have to think split, don't they? They have to work on their own side of the square, unless you mention those magic words, grant. Zigzag is very similar to that. Lots of times they don't know who the leader is unless they're looking out. Then they know they're a leader if they're looking out. But, for instance, one little thing that I do, if I say heads touch a quarter, and then I get the whole square moving by saying girls pass through. For instance, could we get a square up? Do I have 4 girls and 4 guys? Could I get up front?
We can use computer cards on it?
Yeah, if you got a deck with you. Dee Dee, you want to come on up? We need a girl.
I don't know if Sandy's capable of doing this level, though. Sandy will get you through it, Bob, I swear. I was driving, though.
Let's have the heads. You guys are the heads here. Wheel through and veer left and tag your line. Now, the leaders, of course, are the girls, and the guys are following or trailing. You do a couple of practice exercises getting them to understand that the leader is leading the way and the follower or the trailer is following someone. But they have a hard time trying to figure out the leader-follower if you put them in other situations other than this. Do a zigzag for me. The girl is the leader. She turns right. The boy turns left. Boy, or run around a girl. Couples circulate a half and bend it. All right, let's have the heads touch a quarter. Do a box counter rotate twice. And let's have all the girls pass through. And the boys do a zoom. Now, I've got the whole square moving, and so now if I call the call zigzag, now they're going to have troubles. And they have to figure out who's the leader and who's the trailer. And one little thing that I've learned is if you're looking at anybody's anything, you're trailing them. And you have to think about what that phrase means. You have to, first of all, think that you're working split. It doesn't matter if you're looking at someone's front, someone's back, someone's shoulder, or anything like that. You're trailing them if you're looking at their back, their front, or their side. Now, in this case, because we're working split, these 4 people in the middle of the square here, there's a wall there. So they're really not looking at anybody. So what we have is 6 leaders, 2 trailers. 2 trailers, would you raise your hand? Those are the zaggers, okay? If we give the typical command, zigzag, let's do that. There'll be 6 ziggers and 2 zaggers. Very good. Split circulate and swing your girl and take a step or 2 or home. Is that the right one? Well, I never was good at sight. That's Steve's department. One other thing but I try to incorporate some fun into the teach of zigzag, and that's one way I do it. Another call I like to look at is the calls of rolls at the advanced level. We have the pass and roll, and we have in roll and out roll as far as the A2. At the A1, we have right roll to a wave and left roll to a wave. Let's have the heads do your wheel through for me, and veer left, and bend it. Do a right and a left through. I tell them at mainstream we have the word roll, and it is used in the situation of roll away with a half sachet. And I usually have them do that. Roll away, half sachet. I tell them that's one, and that's your first time that you've probably heard the word roll. Then I say, girls, roll your boy away, half sachet. Take his wallet while you do. I don't know if you've heard that phrase before or not, but you try to get them to relax. And by doing that, they learn faster. Let's have the center sachet. Big one went in first, right? Okay. Pass through. The next kind of roll that they've learned in their dancing was at the plus level, which was the partner trade and roll. That was one typical one. Do a partner trade and roll. And the roll there at the plus level is only a 90-degree turn. And then I go back and I said, now, what was the roll at the mainstream? It was how much of a turn? 360, wasn't it? At the advanced level, when we use the word roll, we're talking about a 180-degree turn. Everyone touch a quarter, and the boys roll and belly bump each other. Try to incorporate maybe doing something like that that will relax them. Boys pass in, center girl run around the other girl. Then I get ready to start teaching, for instance, like out, roll, circulate. Let's have you do a pass-through. I started from probably a position that they're not ever going to see, but it helps me. I usually prepare the dancer for success. You try to prepare them by practicing the right roll to a wave and the left roll to a wave because they've had that. So let's say that we've already been dancing them and we've practiced our right roll to a wave. What I'm going to tell them to do is the boy that is on the end of the line, pretend that you're a little tow truck and you're going to tug that whole line of four to your right by dodging to the right. That boy, you're a tow truck, tow your line to the right one spot. Just dodge. That's all I want you to do. Now what's going to happen is that they're all going to do like a left roll to a wave, but they're not going to make a wave. And what they're going to do is move their bodies to the left, rolling 180, because at the advanced level it is 180. Where at the mainstream the roll word is 360. At the plus level the roll is only a 90. Here we're talking 180. So everybody individually roll left and you'll get your line back adjusted. Okay? Pass through. Then I tell them what's going to happen is that boy on the end, you're going to do a circulate to the other end, and the other three in your line are going to be doing the left roll. And the definition is now recited to them. I tell them it's the end looking out that circulates, and the other three people in that wave or line have to roll. Now I point out to them that there are two ends, both looking out. So I need to designate which one it is, and so I've said the boy is going to be the circulator. So that boy on the end, you circulate, the other three left roll. And I tell them they have completed an out roll circulate. Pass through for me again. If I have the other boy on the end, that's the side boy, and I'll designate him. If I tell him that he's the circulator, now the rolling action goes to the right. So I have him go, circulate, and now the other people right roll. And then eventually you get into doing the ocean wave and the two-face lines, and it seems to go a little bit better for me. Do a star through, and the leaders trade. Everybody pass through, trade by, pass through, and did I get lucky this time? Alley man left. Square your set. Heads touch a quarter for me, and spread. Now I do one more time where I do an out roll circulate, because now the end is looking out. It's just that one girl. So she circulates. The other three people will all do right rolls. Go. Then I call it again, and I point out to them there's still one end looking out. It's the girl this time. And so when she circulates, the boys have to do the left roll, and the girl has to do the right roll. Out roll circulate. Then I point out to them, if I was to call out roll circulate again, the caller would be wrong. It'd be illegitimate call, because both ends are looking in. And here's the point. Then when I pick up and I teach at the same time I do out roll circulate, I teach in roll circulate. Because now I will say, I'm going to designate one of the ends, either the girl or the guy, and I teach them we're going to do in roll circulate. And the definition is the same, except that the end looking in is the circulator and the other people are the rollers. Do an in roll circulate. Girl is the designated circulator. And then I resolve the square and proceed on. Okay? Thank you, Square. Appreciate it.
Don't you dare sit down.
Those are just a couple of calls that I wanted to show and try to incorporate some fun into it. I guess our moderators here, do you have any words of wisdom yet?
I never did. Why would I suddenly have them? I would comment often in that arrangement that Randy was using where he needed to designate somebody. We often use the term preferred. We might say end boy preferred for an out roll circulate when both ends are facing out, or the in situation. That it's a little bit quicker to say. You don't have to say the designated answer. And again, he was talking about the teaching approach. You know, he would designate during the teaching approach. But if you chose to call that application on the fly. You might want to say, and teach your dancers that that's what you mean by that phrase, end boy preferred, end girl preferred for an out-roll circulate. Often when we're in the ocean wave arrangements, did you already touch on that? You obviously have one person on the end who's automatically looking out, so you don't designate in that situation. It defaults to whoever the end looking out is will make the go on that.
I might mention that by teaching that kind of a situation, you're already hitting right into all position with them right off the bat. So you don't have to go back and show them a two-face line out-roll circulate, a wave out-roll circulate. You've already got that kind of incorporated. The word preferred is what they use, but also another little thing to incorporate the fun is tell the dancer, whoever figures out that they're the circulator, that they should give a signal or a grunt or say, it's me. And you can have fun with the dancers that way also. I like to have crowd reaction from the dancers, and lots of times they really get into saying, it's me, or here I go, or something to that effect. Hey, or out, or whatever it might be.
On that same line, talking about getting the rapport with the floor and the interaction going, particularly when you're in the teaching mode, that's a great call to say, and they know what you're working on. You're introducing it. They have a sense of the call, and you want to say, okay, who is it? Who's it going to be? Pre-cue it. Signal them. Let them make the decision when they're first learning the action. They'll also get a lot better at doing the hollering a lot quicker because you've prompted it. And that's getting that back and forth going between you, And then, of course, if you haven't done the preferred idea yet, the very first time you expose them to both ends facing out and say, who's it going to be? And, of course, both ends will raise their hands. Say, well, we have a minor problem, right? Pain, blood, various and sundry, bring up the insurance levels. But, and kid with them about that sort of thing. But you can use that very readily. But get them involved. Get them involved in thinking about it. Because what you're going to see is people are going to be looking up and down that line, or the wave to find out who it is. They don't think it's them, but they're not sure who it is because they're going to start debating which way do I roll, right or left.
This is not question and answer period yet, sir.
Sir. What do you think it is, your dad?
Yes, Mr. Kopman.
Senior.
Well, I was talking from a point of view where the dancers that I'm teaching A2 have been dancing A1 for some time, and so they're familiar with right roll and left roll a lot more than they are. I can see where you're saying run and flip. I wanted to read what out roll circulate was from this book. It says, the end facing out circulates. Meanwhile, each of the other dancers in a single smooth motion faces the vacated position, takes a step forward, and turns a quarter the same way they first turned. I couldn't believe that CALLERLAB had something to do with that. This is a book that has got CALLERLAB on the cover. You got to be careful of what you pick up and buy nowadays. But it says the single smooth motion is a run or flip. It does say that here, Lee. I was using it mainly because I kind of have some fun with using the word roll by starting out telling them the first learn roll at mainstream, then they learned it at plus, and then at A1 they've learned right roll and left roll. Now at A2, we're going to go back and expand a little further. I can see where you're coming from with the run and the flip.
I wanted to say two things before we'll play a little bit here. One of the stereotypes about advanced and challenge dancing that we always hear from the mainstream and the plus dancers is, I don't want to dance advanced level or challenge level because they never have fun or they never smile. We get you get different things out of advanced and challenge than you may get at mainstream and plus. You still have the social aspect. And a lot of people I know, I still do singing calls at all my advanced, and always even at C1 we have singing calls at the end. So you get something different out of it though in terms of the choreography. That's what they're there for. They're there because they want to go beyond relay the deuces. They want to go beyond spin chain and exchange the gears and swing throughs and follow your neighbors. So they're there for vocabulary. When I teach, because they're coming in probably with a bad attitude, they're coming in there maybe because a friend said, yeah, we're moving up on, I want you to, stay friends with us, come on up. Because they're coming in there with kind of a bad attitude, I want to teach where they have the most success immediately. I want them happy. I want to break that barrier, that stereotype of the square dancers that are dancing advanced and challenge are not having fun. They are, but they're going to get something different. And I started to think about something. Have the head couple star through. California twirl. And make an ocean wave. One of the things that when I was talking to Randy on the telephone last week, I had said that I don't teach things except from pretty much one position when I'm teaching advanced, because I want them to have immediate success. And I started to look down the list, and in my conversation I realized that I was wrong. Because if a call has more than one part to it, chain reaction, transfer the column, if it's got more than one part, I teach it only from one position. I get them used to one position. But when you get a move like an AC-deuce or a cut the diamond that only has one part to it, when it has one part, and there's such a small amount of effort that's put into learning that one part, I do vary it. And I started to realize that in the course of the conversation. I do positioning when it's only one call. For example, this is what I'll show the dancers. How many of you do not know how to do an AC-deuce out there? Okay, do an AC-deuce. I'll tell the dancers before I'm calling, I'll say this, you'll do the usual swing, do a swing through. I'll say, girls circulate, boys trade. You just did an AC-deuce. Boys run around the girl. Boys circulate, girls trade. That's also an AC-deuce. And what's happening is you're taking a plus level dancer who's a little bit nervous and intimidated about moving on to advanced dancing, and right away you're saying, wow, I just did one of the advanced calls. Just like that, although you've been calling it at plus level for them since they've started. Then the line of four, past the ocean. So my point is I'm slipping in a call that they're immediately comfortable with. And now I'll say, okay, let me show you what an AC-deuce is, because we're going to do this from unusual positions, and I want you to know the definition. The ends circulate. The centers trade. That's an AC-deuce. And I really try not to refer to it the boys and the girls when I'm starting to teach it. Swing through. On an AC-deuce, what do the ends do? Circulate. The centers? Trade. And you have no idea how helpful it is when I went to college for education, how important it is to get the people involved. I don't know if any of you out there are listening to me unless I get you to respond. So if I say everybody out there that's sitting out there, what do the ends do on an AC-deuce? Well, I know. Those who answered circulate, listen to my question. What do the centers do? Well, that's really important. And I get the dancers to be involved. When I'm teaching advanced, I make them repeat the call to me. Because do you ever find when dancers are trying to teach each other, they never use definition. Oh, the boy, he just goes there, and then the boy, he turns around here, and then he follows the girl, and it's never a centers and end. It's the boys do this and the girls. They have no idea the basic rules and definitions of the calls in most cases. So I want to get them involved in this so that they can start to think about the definition. Boys, run around the girl. I want the boys to circulate while the girl's in the middle to do a walk and dodge. Now, this won't come when I first teach them, but now I'm 2 or 3 tips into a dance, and I'm going to say, now listen, group, you just did the AC-deuce, and all of you look real great doing it. But now it's time to show you that we can really expand on a simple little call. Now, if they went to John Doe's advanced class, he probably didn't do an AC-deuce from this position. He probably did it from waves or two-faced lines. I want them to come back to my advanced class. So I want to take this a step further, but not beyond their capabilities. I want them to be happy. When they're going to pay their $6 or $7 or whatever they're paying for a dance, dollars per couple, I want them to come back and enjoy themselves and have success. So I'm going to say to them, okay, the ends on an AC-deuce, what are you supposed to do? Circulate, and they'll circulate. Now, centers, before you move, the rule on the centers, what are they supposed to do in the middle? they're supposed to trade. Now, girls, you have to be real careful where you are now. When you do a partner trade, it's very important you know that whenever you trade, you always face the wall behind you. Girls do a partner trade in the middle. That was an AC/DC from that position. Now, I want all the girls to run around the boy. 4 boys in the middle do a walk and dodge while the girls do a U-turn back. Now, from here, when we do an AC/DC, everybody, what do the ends do on an AC/DC? They circulate. Well, in this position, girls, where you are for your circulate, all you have to do is a pass-through. So do that. Boys, you're in the center. What do the centers do on an AC/DC? Trade. Boys do a partner trade. Now, girls, just for now, do a U-turn back. My whole point, or the whole idea of this, is I'm getting instant success, and I'm not anywhere beyond their reach. Touch a quarter. All 8 circulate. Boys run around the girl. Centers pass through. Swing through. Girls circulate while the boy looking out do a U-turn back. All the boys pass through. From here, do an AC/DC. Now, that's well and good, except for what do you do now? Sometimes when you're expanding on your calls, you can run into major problems. Here you are being real creative and innovative, and now I have a line that maybe I don't know how to get out of. So one of the things you have to be aware of before you do your preparation for a dance, if you're not used to doing things like this, is you better put some checkers down and say, okay, now what are the possibilities and how can I easily get out of this? I'll give you a real quick way. 4 boys in the middle pass the ocean. And now you have a diamond. Okay, let's have the boys in the middle explode your wave. Let's say I didn't want to do that. And I wanted a real easy get out. Boys face each other, girls face in behind their behind. Now at least I'm in a position where they're generally facing the same directions. I don't have 3s and 1s. I have everybody facing in the middle. Of course, I have to be able to deal with this. Boys pass through. Somebody out there give me a quick call that I can get out of this with. One call. Say again? Star through is a perfect call. And now we're back into 2-face lines. So the whole point of doing this way when you're teaching something as simple as an AC/DC is, number 1, get them to where they feel comfortable. This is the very first step they're indoctrinating themselves into in the advanced. Look how smart they feel. And they also are doing something different that they probably did when they were at plus. So we're going a step beyond. I don't know if John or Rainey are going to go next. Later on, maybe if we have time, we'll talk about with the chain reactions too. I'll show you something different. So take it away if you guys.
Ferris wheel.
Oh, did I have to resolve this?
Stars are, yeah. I'm
Clap to the beat, you're home.
Getting better. One thing that Steve touched on was something that I picked up from Burl, the late Burl Maine. He got the crowd to react no matter what level he was teaching. Have the heads pair off and step to a wave. On the call when he would do swing through, he would tell them the definition and get them to do it. And he would tell them that it was half by the right, do that, and the boys half by the left. And then he would tell the dancers, I'm going to ask you a question. And your response will be, he would tell them what the answer was. And he'd get them to yell back. He would say, did the boys finish? And the dancers would say, of course. Swing through. Did the girls finish? Of course. And that's the same kind of thing that Steve was talking about. Let's have you do an explode and touch a quarter. And the outside girl do U-turn back. What was I going to do with this? Center's quarter in. Those 4 touch a quarter. And spread. And let's do a cycle and wheel. And a right and a left through. Another thing that I was going to go and show you another little thing that I have fun with, trying to put them into enjoying themselves. On the call pass and roll, for instance. All of you know pass and roll, right? One little thing that I tell the dancers, the centers, I use this, I guess, the same-sex gender so I can help people designate who's doing the turn-through, who's doing the right roll. And I tell the girls when they walk by the guy, when they pass him by to start pass and roll, I just tell them, girls, I want you to make sure that guy comes back to you, and I want you to whisper in his ear and say, come back. And you'd be surprised. They'll do that, and they have fun while they're doing it. And then when the guy does come back, I tell him, say goodbye to that girl because you got to go back over to the other side. Do a pass and roll. Girl, say it. I didn't hear you say it. Follow that guy all the way over and he'll right roll to you.
Sandy said it.
Does Andy say it?
You bet.
But and you can do that with a lot of different calls. I do that same kind of a thing when I teach them scoot back at the mainstream level. I tell those girls, whisper in his ear, come back. And then you change it around, get the men doing it. You can square your set. I'm getting tired of resolving that, guys. I'm going to turn it over to John.
Boom, boom. Did she come back? No, these folks are doing so well, and we have the square memorized now. It should be easy. One of the three of us ought to be able to resolve it. You know, I mean, or we could like take turns resolving.
Quit it, Andy.
I'm not sure where Andy thinks he is. Okay, let's all share some ideas here. One of the things that's going on, the session is about how to teach it, and both Randy and Steve keep coming back to something, and it's really critical to any teaching level, whether it's advanced or not, and that's the communication skills. We're talking about how do we communicate what we want to do. Much of what we do with the dancers when we teach them at any level is try to draw for them a mental map. We want them to understand where they're going before we send them out into Nana land, right? When they don't have handholds anymore, somebody to pass off one to another. I mean, we've all been in those situations where there is a dancer in the square that you don't hand them off to somebody else without getting a signed receipt. I understand that, but for the most part, we don't. You know, we want to have them in a situation where they have a sense of where they're going. Now, they've touched on a lot of the really key things. They're talking about humor and lightening the situation, not getting too intense. Not everybody's bag is humor. Not everybody's a stand-up comedian with the dancers, and we're not suggesting that you be that. However, you want to be able to know what's happening with the dancers and let them be at ease with what you're doing, and that it's okay to make mistakes. We will all make mistakes as callers, as will the dancer, and they love that. And I think most of you experience that even in your beginners. It's really not exclusive to the advanced world. We often find that we forget little things. Those are things that we should make notes about beforehand. I don't want to forget to mention this. And in the communication level, as one of the things was mentioned to me, Honey said, what about that in-roll circulate? It's in, I-N, as opposed to end. And I have any number of times, I've had dancers come in and say, well, I don't get that thing. We're both on the end. I say, well, that's true, but we're talking about the end facing in. Right? Makes a difference. It's a little thing. The comment that Lee had earlier about the right roll, he was just worried about communications problems and making more problems for ourselves than we already have to deal with. So that's important. Randy, you started to touch on something that I think is particularly important, and that's gender arrangement. When I'm teaching, I believe wherever possible, you put same gender together. When you get to know them a little bit better, you can say same sex. But for starters, just use same gender. Hello. They're not out there, Steve. I'm all alone. I'm all alone. Thank you. Okay. You're all what? We have to talk.
What's your room number?
Right. The comment made to me was we're all still the same sex. I was getting a little nervous. Where did I lose control, Steve? I just don't know. On gender arrangement, a good example would be have the heads pass through. We'll do the very advanced aspect here. Same head, separate, go around one, make a line. Ooh. Okay. Touch quarter. Triple scoot, now that it's back on the plus list. You see, there's always a dancer who's being creative. For those that were doing pass and roll, good luck. Yes, okay. Right. Hi there. I didn't... I would have worried too, because she said we're all the same sex. So okay. All right, let's kind of come back here to. We let them stand too long. It's obviously what we've done. If I was going to teach the call transfer of the column, I would teach it initially from this arrangement, right? And I would teach it in such a fashion as to be able to identify boy-girl arrangements and tell them where they're going to draw that mental map. And I would say to the boys, working single file, I want the lead boy to look over his right shoulder and see where the other center boy is on the other side of the square. Look over your shoulder. Look at his outside shoulder. When this call is done, you're going to be standing there looking at his shoulder. There will be one minor problem. He won't be there at the time. Right? That's okay. Don't worry about it. Just keep looking. Right. Now, that's what I said. I told him that lead boy look at where the center boy is on the other side. Right? That's really important. Center boy, you will follow. You will be standing looking at the girl's shoulder who's next to you, only she'll be gone also. It wasn't anything personal, but she'll be gone. Right? So the lead part of this action is going to be for the first two people. The boys are going to move around single file to that side position as the girls step forward to make a right hand foursome. Right? And the boys move around and turn to look in. Right? And fellas, you do have a handhold. That is where transfer puts that action. If we were to do transfer and, as comes up a little later, right, the outsides would have a handhold. Right? The center dancers, if we know the rule, the definition, we ask them to do what on a transfer? Cast 3. Right? At this point, then they do the extend, and that's when the boys have to adjust and allow for the extend. I could talk specifically to the gender about where we wanted them to go. Right? It's a much faster way to communicate. Now, the next concern that obviously we have is, well, that's fine, but I haven't done a lot of all-boy or all-girl activity at Plus. You now have to learn that. I would recommend it earlier if you can get away with it. Some dance communities are not comfortable with it, but if you can use it, and when you get to advanced, definitely use it. It will accelerate your teaching ability. Your ability to communicate will heighten quickly. Do a single hinge. Do an in-roll circulate. None. Oh, one of them hollered. Good, thank you, honey. Centers run right. Couple circulate. Bend whatever you've got. Okay? Touch quarter. Now, right away, after I've gone through it with the boys in the lead several times, and alternating which was the first boy, which was the second boy, I would then come back, change it over, put the girls in that situation several times so that we have a number 1 girl in the column at this point. Then I'd change the number 2 girl in the column. When that's done, while I've communicated with them at every step, they have all been in each position. So then I can come back to a mixed gender arrangement. Transfer the column. So the 2 ladies are in the lead. They'll go around looking to the center spot. Fellows cast 3 and extend. Excuse me? You're going to add. Okay, Steve wants to add something, so don't move. This could be critical.
Let the centers trade. Well, this is not as basic. Centers run. Bend the line. I felt better on this one.
Use them both. Pass through, do a U-turn back. Touch a quarter. Okay, just for teaching purposes, instead of the way I teach a transfer of the column is exactly from this way. And what I'll do is I'll tell the boys and tell them they are the leaders to do a track 2. Do that, boys. Do a track 2. And then face in. Now, why? Why do I do that? Number 1, they can all track 2 from that position. All the boys are capable of doing a track 2 when they're on the left side in the lead, and I don't have to worry about them finding a center boy or finding another boy. I can just let them do what they're comfortable with. And then I'll tell the girls to extend to a box of 4, cast 3 quarters, and then extend. So that may be another alternative on teaching it. Centers trade, centers run, couples circulate, bend the lines, or do every other call, touch a quarter. Then when we get into this kind of a situation, now we have the 2 girls in the lead. I said, now girls, you're going to go to your right on a track 2. I'm just not going to tell the girls to do a track 2. Anybody tell me why I wouldn't tell the girls to do a track 2 from here? Because that's not a normal, quote, normal position that they would do a track 2 from. So I would say, girls, you are going to your right, and only the girls to your right do a track 2. Do that. Girls, when you get there, face in. And girls, you are exactly across the set from the other girls. So I won't assume that just because the boys did a track 2 and they understood that terminology, that putting the girls in the same position, they're going to easily do the same thing. You really have to take a little bit care of that too. Boys, extend to a box of 4 and quarter through. Extend your tag. Boy, run. Okay, you resolve it.
Thank you, Steve. The last time we give him the microphone. Track 2. It's a good idea. Okay. Pass through. Wheel and deal. Center sweep a quarter and back away. The others reverse flutter wheel. I always worry about them when I go to the mainstream calls. I always get nervous, you know. Okay. Now, another thing that Randy touched on was what I refer to as chunking in the teaching system. He was talking about putting in-roll and out-roll circulates together. I think it's a very effective teaching tool, and you need to look at it. I will put things together such as switch the wave. In the same program, if the dancers are functioning reasonably well, they will also get switched to a diamond, and if they already know hourglasses, they'll get switched to an hourglass in the same evening, if they know hourglass already. those combinations build one natural extension upon another. And if you work with that type of chunking method, you will progress more quickly with the dancers, and they will put these calls in a mindset. They will group them and deal with them more readily, and they will see the logical connection for them. They'll make more sense to them, and therefore they do learn them quicker because they can see it. They can actually see what happens. And that works well. Another area on that would be quarter through, three-quarter through, and the grands, the grand quarter through and grand three-quarter through. I would chunk those. I would put those together. And you'll take a large segment of material and review them heavily, but those are things that should go together. I also would like to talk with you just a little bit, an area that I see sometimes is rugged. Can I ask the sides to do a star through? Spread, the outsides join. The as couples concept is one that we can accomplish several things on. For starters, when I talk about this, I try to explain to the dancers immediately that what we have in the square when I say as couples at this point in this type of an arrangement is a box of 4. That there are only 4 people in the square. Now, would anybody venture a guess why I arrange the dancers this way? All right, not only as couples, but I have, all right, and if the 2 boys, let me step into this, if the 2 boys are together and I've told them 2 boys are acting as one unit, one person. Same is true for the girls. Girls, where are you in relationship to the boy? On the right. And the fellas have the girls on the right, okay? Where, or across, but, all right. But what we're...
The gender lady.
That's the gender lady, same problem. Right. The thing that's interesting here is that the normal couple, quote normal, couple arrangement is the boy with the girl on the right. So I've kept that same arrangement if I'm initially showing as couples. And one of the key things that seems not to ever get understood by the dancers is that in that couple, let's take one of those units, the 2 boys with their back to the caller, right? One of you is the right hand of that unit, and one of you is the left hand, and this never seems to get across. Who's the right hand? The inside hands are occupied. They are not available. So it is, again, that natural arrangement. This is my left, this is my right, hasn't changed. The inside hand's not available. So I would ask you, as couples, to touch a quarter. We all know that's a right hand situation. And I would actually go through with the dancers, and I would not be hesitant to say, okay, in the as couples arrangement of the ladies, which of you is the right hand? Make them put it up. As couples circulate. We always do it that way. Yeah, I know. Bend the line. As couples, and here's where hands get important. As couples, right and left through. So which right hand to right hand pulls by, and then the courtesy turn, which the ladies are insistent upon receiving. As couples, fan the top.
I never caught that. I'm so glad I came to this.
Stand by, it's going to get better. As couples, explode end. As couples, let's see how good they are. Square chain through. Pull by, turn in, step to the left hand.
Don't forget.
Don't come back.
Don't come
Good.
back.
As couples, California twirl. Now, this is fine, and it looks really well. It does very well for us. Have a center sachet. As couples, who's the right hand? As couples, right hands raise. Happens to be all ladies in this instance, and that is harder, particularly for your newer advanced dancer to see. The other one they can see much more readily, and I would suggest you show it to them that way initially, right, and then go to a mixed gender arrangement, and I think you'll have more success in teaching them. But from here, could we ask for an as couples square through 3? I want to use a lot of hand calls when I initially get involved in the as couples idea. It helps quite a bit. Step and slide. I also didn't say mother may I, right? Okay.
Simon said.
Right. Leaders trade. Pass in. This is my favorite, and actually I've only been doing this recently. Some of you may have been doing it for a long time, but I've been having a tremendous amount of fun with this. As couples, star through. That was nice. That was a good, smooth start. As couples, double star through. Okay. Good.
Time's up.
Bend the line. As couples, star through. That one will often slow your average advanced floor quickly because they will end up trying to look in because that's where they were the first time around. They will not want to end up looking out. Tag the line, please. All the way through. Good. zoom, peel off, as couples, archy star through.
Well, they got
Right. They got there, but it was a struggle. Right. Purely a gimmick. But I would not hesitate to use that kind of a gimmick in a teaching mode once the dancers were getting into phase, so they could really truly come away with a sense of which is the right hand, which is the left hand, that they will be able to have an identity factor there that will work well for them. And it's an important approach, and it can help you quite a bit. I want to give just a couple more minutes to my partners in crime here, and then if we have time, I would like to show you one other thing. In fact, let me just mention this very quickly. Pass the ocean, because we want to leave some time for questions, answers, sundry comments, Split circulate. Good. All the girls turn back. Couples circulate. On the one of my favorite calls, Cast a Shadow. I forget who wrote that, but anyway.
Ask Steve. He knows how old he was.
Steve wrote me a note. It says D-A-D. Does that mean Lee? Okay, all right. Now, why is it every time Randy and I are speaking, he leaves the room, and when you talk, he comes back in? I don't understand. Surely he's heard everything you have to say. All right. If I was...
I noticed that, too.
Yeah, we all used to be friends, right? Yeah, right. On the call Cast the Shadow, we always look for neat little things and ideas to help dancers. One of the things that I discovered a while back that I enjoy using is that the dancers that are leaders in the call Cast the Shadow always walk away from the middle. And the dancers that are looking in, the trailing dancers, always go forward. Doesn't matter if it's right-handed or left-handed. That always works. And that is kind of a place for the dancer to hang his hat, because when we go to the left-hand arrangements or a left-handed wave, they panic a little bit. And if they understand it's away from the center and they're beginning to move in the right direction, they'll find their spot, even if they have that momentary hesitation for the dancer that's not right on top of it. That will work for you. And those kind of things are helpful. And I also believe in using, in a teaching situation especially, triples. I will do Cast a Shadow 3 times. I will do Scoot and Weave 3 times. As a training drill, quarter through 3 times. They work. Those kind of drills are helpful. As couples, left quarter through, but only once. Right? Good. Got it? As couples, lock it. This is tough. We're working out of left hands here. As couples, left hinge, just in case there's a question. Bend the line. Pass the ocean. And we can go on, and we're not going to try to show you everything that we know. What I'm looking for is neat ideas that will help the dancer retain and learn the idea, or give them a greater chance for success in the business on the shadows, those facing in. Who's facing out in our Cast a Shadow situation? Cast a Shadow. People looking out go away from the center, all of them. Now, those out facers on each side went in a different direction, but they went away from the center. Yeah, it wasn't that. It wasn't as couples, but that's okay. You've been up a long time, I know. Couples circulate. Bend the line, please.
I think you're doing great.
I think so too. I think it's just terrific. Pass through.
Leave your $7 at the door.
Right. Step and slide. Good. What do you mean? What step and slide? Oh, I see. All the centers quarter left and do a box counter rotate while the outsides trade, and the centers roll. Okay. Good. Now, those are some thoughts. Okay. All right. Excuse me, I just got here. Did you get that written down?
Write that one down. When John said he was doing things as couples and he uses things as hands to get them moving right away, I kind of look at it the other side of the coin, too. I kind of delay on that.
Well, I want them to understand. I particularly want
the right hand and the left hand.
There's a right hand and a left hand. They often miss that. That was one of my main points.
Right.
Yeah.
Heads, do a star through for me and spread. I guess I kind of approach it from the other angle and then go to using the hands because, for instance, if I say work as couples and swap around, there's no hands. It's very hard sometimes to get anything, for instance, those star throughs that you were doing and that kind of thing. Sometimes it's kind of hard to get any kind of smooth flow to that. And this is not a call that is really smooth either if you say as couples swap around, but it helps kind of sink in that 2 boys are doing what normally 1 boy does. As couples swap around. Bend the line. As couples back away. As couples wheel through. I didn't see no clapping. Boys, you have to clap with the one. There you go. And I usually, and the dancers will do the same as what these people just did. I tell them I didn't see no clapping, and they'll try to do the patty cake. You get them relaxed, and that's one of the things that I try to do. I'm not always good at trying to put humor in, but sometimes it works good for me. Square your set. I think these guys, did you want to use a square? I think we should give them a break.
No, how about a nice hand for this group?
We know.
$7. A headman lead to the right and collect $7.
For starters, we will, particularly at the moment, I want to do thank Steve Kopman and Randy Dougherty both for coming in for the session for you this morning. We readily recognize that there may be ideas there that we've shown you that you don't feel good about or you don't agree with, or you have another way you'd like to do it. It's those other ideas that you have that are really worthwhile sharing, particularly here at convention. Don't keep those a secret. The more people that are dancing well, the more time we'll have to enjoy them all together. And we'd like you to do that. Also, we are prepared to deal with questions and answers, suggestions, things you'd like to share with the group. If you have something like that, stand up, let it loose. We don't have a floor mic, so we'll ask you to make sure everybody can hear, and we'll talk about some things of that nature. Any questions or ideas, or anything anybody'd like to share with us? Oh, look at this. And they've all gone to lunch. Oh, yes, sir. No. I would not be comfortable describing it that way. The question had to do with box counter rotate or split counter rotate, working in that group of 4. And the gentleman was asking, can you treat it as if I understood you correctly, can you treat it as a star to like a diagonal? Okay. One of the ways that I address that, and we'll open it to the panel, but one of the ways I address that is that group of 4 is going to function as if their feet were nailed to a Lazy Susan, and the caller was going to turn the Lazy Susan 1/4 around. Now, many of you understand the walk and quarter, quarter and walk crutch that we use, and that's purely what that is. That's not a definition. But it gives a dancer a traffic pattern to see where they want to move, and they also have to be told that, remember, it is a circular motion, and they can put a roll on that call. And I would encourage that so they do remember that there's a roll available to them because it is a circular movement. And I would allow them to initially do the walk and quarter, quarter and walk, or put their hand on the shoulder of the person in front of them and move as a unit in a circular thing. On the idea of the word counter, I try to stress to the dancer that the word counter in their mind should mean continue. Continue in there, and if it's a box or a split, continue in that foursome. And I ask them to think that way, that have the mind continue, that idea come into your mind, so you're working in that group, and you're moving in a circular motion 1/4 around. That works for me. I'll turn to either of the fellows for comments.
Well, I try to get away from the walk and turn and walk.
Mm-hmm.
What you're saying about the star, I kind of incorporate that in. I tell them we like to try to keep whatever shoulders to the center of your own little box or split. Keep that, and I bring up the word radii or radius, thinking about a circle. Try to keep that distance the same as you move around. Sometimes I have success with it, sometimes I don't. The idea of the Lazy Susan, I've never used that before. I like that idea. One thing that you have to be careful is when you put something into people's minds and you say, think about a Lazy Susan, and you're going to turn it. For instance, immediately I thought to myself, if you have them in a tidal wave and you call split, counter, rotate.
But we were talking boxes.
Yeah, we were talking boxes. But in that situation, the Lazy Susan thing doesn't apply. Now, if you had them in a tidal two-face line, then the Lazy Susan comes into play where you're working on your own side again. So you got to be careful sometimes because they'll take you at your gospel and say, that's it. And you really got to be careful sometimes. I've fallen into traps by saying something that for one specific situation and then later on got called on the carpet because what I told them wasn't necessarily always true.
We don't have that.
Show you the difference?
Sure. Sure. Can we get 4 people? We'll take a quick look at that. Also, we have on the A2 here, I noticed too, the split and box counter rotate is all we're showing, rather than a 1x4 deal, like a wave or a diamond. those get, you know, they're getting a little more esoteric there rather quickly, I think. You know. Do we have 4?
Okay, let's get these first 4 guys. Just come, stand up for a second, and just be heads. Yeah.
Read the book.
Heads touch a quarter. Just while he's reading the definition, let me just show you how I teach it, just for effect. The people looking in, put your free hand on the shoulders of the person in front of you. And then with the dancers, I'll kid, now make sure it's the shoulder that you're touching. Now I want you to take that box of 4 and move it around one position. What you just did is called a box counter rotate. And I say, and when you get mature about this, you don't have to put your free hand up. But as we're doing this now, this is a good quick teach on it. Just you 4 in the middle, box counter rotate. Okay, now those guys, put your hands down, and you 4 in a really mature way, box counter rotate or split counter rotate. So number 1, it's a quick teach. You don't have to worry about facing in and out and turn and stuff like that. It's real quick and real simple. And again, instant success. I have no idea what the real definition is on that. I don't, because I think Lee didn't write that. That's the reason why I don't know it. Did you write split counter rotate? Oh shoot!
Wrong again.
I must have moved out of moved to Knoxville at that time. 2 forks and turn them toward the spoons. Thanks, guys.
You want to hear the definition? Mike, did you have a comment?
Yeah. Another reference point for the counter rotate is then makes it easy to do it from like the title stuff you were talking about, or even diamonds, is refer to the center area as a maypole when you're working around.
Yes.
The image of keeping the same distance from the maypole.
I knew he was going to talk about that.
Then it doesn't matter what formation the group of 4 is, whether it's an ocean wave or a diamond or a box. If they work on the maypole reference center, then they're still working around it, and it's still valid from all the different formations.
It does, in this book, which is, I'm not going to necessarily plug it, but you can get it over at Heyman Audio. It does say every dancer could roll at the end of this call, and I think before we had lots of discussion using the old walk and turn and walk, that it was not legit. And here it does say about walking around, it says if no fraction is given, a quarter is taken for granted. It says by walking forward in a smooth arc to reach that position. Each dancer works independently of the other 3 dancers in the formation. Leaders remain leaders, trailers remain trailers, and it goes, you know, it's a whole paragraph here. And then they give some examples. Like I said originally, this is not from the CALLERLAB manual. This is a book that I just happened to pick up, and it does have CALLERLAB at the front cover of that. You got to be aware, fellas, of some of the books that are out there. It might say CALLERLAB A1 and A2 or something to that effect. I don't think this book has been approved. I'm not sure one way or the other. I picked up 2 different manuals as I was just walking through the exhibitors. Neither one of them were the actual CALLERLAB training manual.
For the gentleman who asked the question, did that address it at all for you?
Well, relating back to making the dancer more comfortable with positions that they're already familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
I think stars would be too confusing. I think stars are too ambiguous on where your positions. Boxes are very crystal clear. You can go to head walls and side walls. Stars, I think, would become too confusing, especially if you ever did a roll after it. You'd have lots of trouble if you did it that way.
Do we have any other questions or comments or ideas to be shared? Yes, sir.
One of the things that I do on as couples that seems to work pretty good or cute is I start out in a normal line of 4 when I teach it, where you have boy, girl, boy, girl. I don't have same sexes together. And I tell the boys to put your arms around the girl's waist next to you, and the girls do the same thing with the boys, only because it's kind of cute for them. Ooh, ah, you know, so you get a little response from that. And I don't do ask couples right and left through right away at all. I would do, ask couples touch a quarter and ask couples scoot back, and I just about kind of leave it there for a little bit. And a walk and dodge I would do. But other than that, I'll put an arm around the waist of the person next to you to get them nice and tight, nice and close. And I like your idea about identifying left hand and right hand. I'm glad I came to the seminar. I'm going to use some of these things.
I'm still doing track 2 and the other thing. Anyone else? Yes, honey.
John, I'd just like to make this point that I think the psychology is really important in teaching this level. And one of the things that I do with my dancers is I tell them that there's only the most parts there can ever be is 4. And that, I think, is an important element because when they get all these different, when you're doing working for the ACD version, formation versions, people panic because they think, oh my God, this is different. But if you say, okay, how many are there? And there's 4 and you've done all 4, you can't panic now. You got them all right. So this is no different.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, works very well.
Anything else? Yes, sir.
Do you think that as the leaders, we're shortchanging our dancers at the lower programs by not preparing them for definition dancing and turning them to advantage?
I'll address that, and the other fellows are welcome to as well. I think we have to be fair and recognize that because we choose to call advanced does not mean that it is the optimum destination level. That plus can be a destination level. They do not need any more information than is necessary to be successful and to function well at the plus level. We shouldn't teach people, I don't believe, with the attitude that by teaching you this way, you therefore can become an advanced or a challenged dancer. I don't know that we're doing them a real service that way. I do believe in exposing even newer dancers to more than one application of a call. I think that's important, but I don't think that we should, I do not subscribe, I used to, but I no longer subscribe to the idea of teaching, quote, all position from beginners forward. I think that takes a very select group of people, and the average class that you get are not going to deal with that, in my opinion. And so I have chosen to step back a little bit from the intensity of that.
I don't mean getting forward. What I mean is, rather than the dancer saying, well, I'm getting bored going to a plus dance, use your position dancing at your plus dance workshop rather than bringing an A1 call into a plus dance.
Okay, I'm not in favor of bleeding the levels to enhance my dance. I would prefer to stay within the level and try to make it more interesting, not necessarily more difficult, but certainly more interesting, if at all possible, based on the material that I have within the Plus program or even an experimental. But I think if we continue to bleed the level and bring the calls down, we create the false sense that the dancers are expected to move up into those levels. So I try not to do that if I can help it, but I think we can develop in a direction of enforcing what they may begin to see in terms of thinking positionally as they become very polished or mature plus dancers. That would give them an opportunity.
CALLERLAB is giving us advanced experimentals to put into the plus program.
Well, that's a quarterly function, and I'm not sure this is the place to address it. That's something those committees have voted in favor of that. We have just a few more minutes before we need to break for lunch, but if you fellows would like to address the gentleman's question, and if you'd repeat the question for the tape, Randy, I'd appreciate it.
Well, the question was, I'm not sure I can repeat it, but it was a matter, do you go into more positioning with the plus people, getting them prepared to go into A2 instead of just rushing with a plus group and teaching them an A1 call or an A2 call? Is that correct, more or less? I'm that same way. I guess I don't necessarily believe that we should bleed the levels down, that there's enough meat and potatoes there at whatever the program is. My favorite is mainstream, just playing with the mainstream calls. There's so much meat and potatoes there that you can keep them having fun. So I don't. But I kind of agree with John that our old school of thought was teach them all position, and when really what we wanted was teach them by the definition. When you're teaching them how to do zoom, please don't say centers, because you're giving them a false security. We use that word center zoom as a helpful hint for beginners, but we should tell them that the definition has to do with leaders. And that's where we're falling behind, I think. That's just one example. if we didn't have to reteach Zoom, if they knew that it was a leader-follower idea.
I think there was a question out there.
You know, when you're teaching the advanced program, do you introduce all of the various formations, arrangements, or do you pick and choose and teach that which they will be exposed to the most? Such, a specific example would be, do you teach and expect them to know a left-handed chain reaction?
No.
So there are certain standard formation arrangements that you would expect them to know for each rhythm.
Correct. I think in terms of left-handed and right-handed, there should be a lot of prompting for success. I would not go to a left-handed column and call transfer the column without saying, now you're in left hands. Let's take a minute and look at what happens from left hand. I would never, at an advanced dance, in my groups, anywhere else, call a left-handed chain reaction, because I can't imagine anybody getting it. It's going to be an immediate disaster for the floor, and it stops the whole flow, and I don't see any, in my mind, point of doing a chain reaction from a left-handed way where they'll never get it properly at any other dance with any other group they would ever dance with. Does that answer that point?
Yes, it does. The reason I just point to that, chairman of the choreography application committee, and at the current time we've completed the plus of mainstream standard application programs. They're now available. And we are in the process of looking at working on the advanced standard formations and arrangements.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get your feeling of whether or not you feel that would be a good thing to have. It sounds like it is. But, well,
Yeah, we can visit with that, because I have some specific feelings. I do think we need to look at the fact that advanced, there's a different psychology about advanced. It is not just a different list of names or vocabulary. There is a different philosophy involved in calling the advanced level. And I'm not real sure that standard applications may be the best approach, and we may talk about things like usages to avoid might be a better application for us to talk about. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciated it. Have a nice lunch.